All right. Well, Eagle Nation, we are thrilled and honored today to spend some time with two of the world's most incredible endurance runners, people who've been longtime supporters and members of Team Red, White, and Blue, going all the way back, I think, to 2012, whose banner in the background right now puts me to shame. So please just join me in welcoming Zach and Nicole Bitter. So thank you so much for taking time out of your schedules here to talk with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Mike.
Thanks so much.
So real quick, just a little bit of the background is, on how this came to be. So Team Red, White, and Blue started back in 2010. And one of the things we did with in the early years was put on these trail running camps outside in the hill country of Texas. And Liza Howard was one of the ones who kind of assembled this and brought it together. And we reached out to really through her to all these incredible endurance runners. And they would come down and take time out of their schedule on Veterans Day weekend to help train veterans in the art and the science of how to be a better trail runner, how to be a better endurance runner. And so my relationship with both of them goes way back, to the 2012 period. And I've been able to follow their incredible journey, all the races they've won, all the records they've set, all the amazing things that they've done, not just in their professional and their running lives, but also in their personal lives as Zach and Nicole are married. So again, thank you so much for taking time. The biggest thing I just want to be able to share with Eagle Nation today is this idea of perseverance, the idea of having the kind of mindset where your voice in the head is telling you that you want to quit, but you've got to keep going on. So maybe if you start with you, Zach, and then Nicole, if you could just first start off by telling us a little bit about couple of the highlights of your career, some of the things that you've accomplished as endurance runners, to give us this sense of awe, right? And to be grounded in just how incredible your mindset must be to do the things that you've done. And so maybe if you could each kind of just share a little bit up front, and then we'll kind of get into a couple of the conversation questions around perseverance and how you endure in the face of consistent challenges.
Yeah. So for me, I guess some of my biggest achievements within the sport of ultra endurance is I hold the 100-mile world record in a time of 11 hours, 19 minutes, and 13 seconds. And since I was able to hit 100 miles before I got to 12 hours, you can kind of double dip a little bit on that one, so to speak. And I kept going until 12 hours and have the world record as well for the furthest run in 12 hours, which is 104.88 miles. And I think I've done somewhere in the neighborhood around 60-ish ultra marathons from 50K up to 200K at this point. And I've really kind of enjoyed that 100-mile distance as one that I usually structure a lot of my training and racing around. In terms of, ways to kind of persevere through difficulties, I think, one thing that people oftentimes look at negatively that I feel like I've been able to leverage as a tool for success in my own career is just failure. I didn't run 11, 19, 13 for 100 miles the first time. It took me about 5, almost 6 years to get to that point from when I first did a race like that. And it was, there's a lot of like kind of small steps forward along the way. There's a lot of learning along the way. And there's a lot of like reflections of seeing points where I didn't mentally push through to a point where I felt like I had gotten my full potential, or I made mistakes that in hindsight I wanted to correct. And then that kind of led to a point where when all those kind of built up to the point where you kind of know, like, okay, this isn't a spot I should be weak, or I need to be a little stronger mentally here, or I need to push my physical limits a little further here. You really get to know yourself. So I think when you look at it from a patient angle and know that every day is going to help you get forward, but no one day is going to throw you all the way to the finish line, then you kind of get in that right mindset. You can kind of just chip away and watch for those small successes along the way as well.
Yeah, real quick, I just got to say a couple of things. Number one, you heard him use the word, I enjoy running 100 miles, right? So you're in a very, very select company of people who would say that, but it just gives you an ability to understand and process just how tough mentally, you have become. And your story, Zach, following it reminds me of another one of my friends and another supporter of Team Red, White, and Blue, and that's Tommy Caldwell, in his effort to climb the Dawn Wall. I remember when I met him, he was in the process, and it was a 7-year journey from when he first had the dream to when he was able to execute it. And you shared a very similar thought right there to what he shared, right? That is, he never viewed the setbacks as failure. Really, it was like, no, I'm growing, right? And I'm growing with the end state to achieve something. So that's really powerful insight. Nicole?
So I do not have a world record. I'm going to throw that out there right off the bat. Probably in terms of my biggest achievement in ultra running is I've run 100 miles on a trail in 14 hours and 22 minutes. And it's the second fastest record for a North American 100 miler for women. So, but when I think about ultra running, probably my best moments are just the ability to run in a number of different countries around the world. Mm-hmm. So I've run races in Italy, France, Hong Kong, Patagonia. And so for me, those are probably the reasons why I keep running, is just to have that opportunity to get to travel and see so many different places and experience those countries.
That's awesome. So yeah, keep going, please.
In terms of, from my perspective, when I think about running, when I'm kind of in a point where I'm struggling, is I just try and get to the next aid station. So it's kind of a metaphor for life. It's kind of like you need to keep going until you get to the next step. So as we have difficulties going on with obviously COVID-19, when every day is kind of a challenge and we don't know what's coming next, I think it's just kind of taking steps to move forward. So getting to that next aid station, whatever that may be, that's what I find is the best tool, because so many times we have moments during a race and even more broadly during life where there are obstacles. So just knowing that there are going to be those low points and pushing through, it's so important, because oftentimes in a race, you'll find that you're feeling stronger within an hour or so. So even more broadly thinking about life, you just need to keep pushing through. And oftentimes you find you're in a much better place with a much better mindset in a short time frame.
I love that. That is such an important thing, I think, for all of us to remember, that, you know, that analogy of get to the next aid station. And obviously so many members of Team Red, White, and Blue who are watching this and listening to this are runners. So that, you know, that analogy certainly resonates about, hey, how do you get to that next aid station? And how do you sort of look at the big picture and try to just say, no, I'm not worried about that long term. I'm going to keep worrying about like what's going on in front of me right here. I just would be curious. I don't know if you have, you know, a particular instance in your mind, but would, you know, be curious to hear, was there a particular race, you know, or an effort that you, you know, participated in, a race in your life where you, like, you can vividly remember, like, you were this close to throwing in the towel and saying, you know what, like, I'm not. And then, Nicole, as you just gave that example, that like a half an hour or 45 minutes later, like, you broke through and either you felt amazing or whatever it may be.
Yeah. And I think Zach has a really poignant example for this one with regards to his world record attempt, but I can say many of my best races, that's been a feeling. So I know in 2015, when I probably ran my best 100-miler, I had moments where I felt weak, maybe midway around mile 65. And I just got to that next aid station. And for whatever reason, I had a pacer who was there, and that just boosted my confidence, and I knew I could keep pushing through with that teammate. But Zach, I think you have a really good example with the world record.
Yeah, you know, on that day, it was the when I broke the record, it was in August and September, and you know, I remember real kind of clearly at one point in the race, around 40 miles in, I was kind of questioning myself, and I call these like seeds of doubt that kind of get planted in your mind, and they're going to be there, and it just depends on kind of how you react to them a lot of times. And at this particular one, it was just like I had a couple laps. I mean, it was on a 433 meter loop. So like you see a lot of data. You can almost get overwhelmed by data if you choose to pay too close attention to it. And, you know, I had a few splits that were out of range from what I was targeting for the day. And I started kind of asking myself, you know, maybe I don't have a world record run in me today, and I should just kind of get comfortable and see and just run a solid time, or, you know, maybe a personal best. And, you know, rather than kind of just succumbing to that thought and letting that negative spiral, I said, okay, well, let's just get back on pace for a couple more laps. And once I was able to do that, you know, that started to kind of spiral into, okay, I can keep going. Let's just do this for a couple more miles. And then, that led to 50 miles and then 100K and then 80 miles. And then you look back at those situations and you kind of realize sometimes, I think that, the difference between a great day and a good day is sometimes just pushing through a couple extra mental barriers. And if you can do that, that's where you're going to kind of go home with those races or events or activities that you're really proud of yourself for, meeting your full potential. And some of that, kind of like I was saying before, comes from, doing it wrong in the past. I've had races in the past where, I get to 80 miles and, that seed of doubt comes to your mind. You're just like, I can't push hard enough to stay on pace. I just need to get to the finish line, or I just need to get in at, a slower than what I could do type of an effort or pace. And then you look back at those and think like, well, what if? So you want to use those as incentive to kind of push you to the point where you can break through, but also ultimately try to minimize them when you get to the point where you have enough of that incentive to kind of build up. And one thing I've always found really useful to get through those, because, sometimes it's nice to have like an action plan. It's nice to say push through, but to actually do it, you kind of need some tools to be able to. And one that I really like is, even when I'm in a 100-mile race at mile 40, I can look at that as I got 60 miles to go. That's a ton of miles to run, and it can be defeating. It can be hard to wrap your head around that. But if you look at it from day one of the training block, if you spent, say, 4 months or 6 months preparing for that particular event, and think of all the hours and all the miles, all the kilometers, that you put in, all the workouts and everything, the 60 miles at the very end of the 100-mile is like that last tiny little bit. So sometimes just trying to dwarf it in this with the entirety of the process can help you kind of put yourself in a mental place to feel comfortable pushing to that next aid station, like Nicole said, or get those splits back where you're looking to get them.
That's powerful. I love that analogy of thinking through, because I'm thinking of myself as a runner and having done, some ultra marathons and like you sit there, people often say, oh, geez, you got to mile 30, you still have 20 to go, and when you think about it like that, you're like, yeah, geez, I still got 20 miles to go. But when you put it in the scope, in the frame of the entire process, all the training that you've put in to be able to get to that point, it helps to put it in perspective, right? And I think that's so much of what I keep hearing from all the various people like you guys that I have the honor to talk to and to pick your brains and to be able to share this with our members, right? That's a message that I think is kind of coming up repeatedly, which is how do you reframe adversity? How do you reframe, the struggle, right? The period that you're in. And so as I think about right now, through COVID-19, right, there's something that so many people are feeling. That sense of helplessness. I mean, there's people who've had to cancel weddings. There's all kinds of people who are training for races and triathlons and competitions that no longer are happening. Right? There's been these major alterations, right, in people's lives, but helping to reframe it, right, can be all the difference in the world. And talking to someone yesterday, like they just talked about so much of that is what you make of it and how you think of it in your mind can then drive the reality. And you just described that in such a powerful way, Zach, with regards to how you were able to do that, when you're going after that world record.
It was even powerful just watching, because I was there crewing for Zach at the time, and you could even just see the expressions on his face, how he was choosing to power through adversity. So you could see that he was physically struggling, but mentally he was just deciding to persevere. So sometimes I think just even watching that in somebody else is powerful too.
Absolutely. That's awesome. That's such a cool story to be able to see that, you were able to share that and to be a part of that journey to see him do that. But then to be able to, all these months later, still recall it, right? And be able to say, hey, this is how I drew inspiration, off of just, seeing him endure, right? I mean, it goes back to some of the quotes that you've heard before throughout history, but I've never really envied somebody who's had an easy life, right? But I have envied many of people who have faced hardship and overcome it. And I think that's one of the things and one of the opportunities we have as a society right now, and as so many of the individuals within that society, is how do we inspire each other? And you see a lot of people getting inspiration, and I see it across social media, posts and pictures of nurses and people and doctors in the medical field and people who are doing all these things to keep society going, right? Like the rest of us are drawing that inspiration, especially for us as veterans, those who served in Team Red, White, and Blue, who are in Team Red, White, and Blue, who served in the military. Like this is something, that you got accustomed to, right? There was a lot of appreciation, for the service that so many men and women provided after 9/11, to serve the country. And again, when you start to, be that inspiration to other people, now here we are as veterans looking to other people for that inspiration. And yet at the same time, there's all these intersections, as you just alluded to, like there's so many people that look to you, right? Nicole is that example that you just gave of like looking to Zach, but there are so many people, as you guys have heard about it from your legions of followers and people who cheer you on every time you toe the starting line, right? That you inspire them through your relentless commitment to what you do. And then of course, seeing you push through that adversity, which you're inevitably going to hit when it comes to race day.
Yeah. And I think, there's a lot of things you can draw that sort of stuff from too. I know, for me personally, watching Nicole just, go through her entire day versus just like doing a good, strong workout in the morning or something like that. Nicole, she's busy. She travels a lot for work. She puts in long hours in her day job. So when she goes through entire training block and executes that and then goes to a race and has a successful performance, I think there's a lot more to that picture than maybe what shows up on the result page a lot of times. And, I'm fortunate that, living with her, I get to see that from kind of the front row seat, so to speak. And so it's just good to see, especially when you think of yourself as a hardworking person. There's nothing like seeing someone who works harder than you to kind of give you perspective and realize that there's always kind of another level in terms of how hard you can work and how hard you can dedicate yourself to specific things. And then also just balance in general too. I think, seeing people who are navigating multiple different, hurdles in life or things in life and being successful at a variety of them is pretty powerful to watch.
So I think it just comes down to that message, right? We just all especially need to support each other and be a team, because I wouldn't be able to do a lot of things related to racing, for example, without Zach's help. And he oftentimes coaches me and runs a lot of workouts with me and makes me stronger. So I think during this time, just making sure that you're supporting all the people around you, whether it's your coworkers who may have families at home who need to be dedicating time to teach their kids during this whole time. Maybe you take on an extra project and sub in for a call, or just being thankful to the people at the grocery store who are putting themselves at risk during this time. And certainly just all of the healthcare providers that are just saving our country. All of that together, if we just band together as a team, it makes us so much stronger. So it's just all those little things, I think, just looking around.
I love it. This has been awesome. This is so cool for me to be able to spend, just this 25, 30 minutes with you and then be able to share it out with our organization. Some of the key takeaways, right, is get to the next aid station. Sometimes you just got to be able to, don't look at like, hey, when's this going to end? No, like, let's just get to that, 1 mile place from here. That might be tomorrow. That might be the next day. And then, the power of inspiration, right? Look to others, to people to your left and to your right for that inspiration to be able to persevere through this. And I also love that, like that little idea, Zach, you gave us with this idea of sometimes like you see that you're not, hey, this day or 2 days in a row, I just wasn't at my best. But you know what? If you can just sort of push yourself to give your best to that certain period of time, that might be all that you need to be able to break through to get back on track, right? When you're going after a world record, or you're just going after trying to optimize and be the very best that you can be in this time of turbulence and chaos. So again, in just such a short conversation, took away so many important and applicable ideas that I know are going to be timely and very much appreciated by Team Red, White, and Blue members across the country. So thank you so much for your time and for sharing your wisdom and your experiences with us. And can't wait to see you out there on the trails, hopefully sometime later this year. And if nothing else, for sure to keep following the journey that you both are on. And again, thank you so much for being with us today.